How's everybody doing? Okay, I have the long-awaited Saturn in Cancer. Saturn in Cancer is very complex, to say the least. Uh, a lot is involved in the explanation on three fronts: the mundane, the esoteric, and the cosmic. Saturn is in its detriment in Cancer, meaning that it doesn't work very well in Cancer. Cancer is a cardinal water sign, and it represents the origin of life, the germinal seed of all that is, especially here on this solar system, on this plane. Whereas Aries is the germinal seed to everything in the cosmos: what is, what will be, and what has been. But Saturn takes stance, a stance in creation. Creation is always being created. It never ends, it doesn't stop. But Cancer is the cardinal energy that creates a permanent, even for a minute, of that kind of creation. Cancer represents cardinal water. So everything on this planet and all the other planets as well vibrate an emotion that has a language of its own. The trees have an emotional language, the plants, the animals. There isn't any living essence in our planet that doesn't have the essence of emotion, of emotional energy. It may be different from human, but nonetheless, it is still emotional energy. Cancer represents the home front. The home front, not just a home with parents and children and grandchildren, although it very well represents that as well. But Cancer also represents the bedrock of creation itself. It is the cradle in which nature rocks back and forth. It is also an energy field that can transmute all kinds of experiences. Now, we're talking esoterically here. Cancer represents the germinal seed of that which will spawn in the future, like an embryo, right? Everything in nature gives birth, and it gives birth in the same process that we do. Just that nature is far more creative and innovative than humans. With human, it's very straightforward, but it does involve a gamete, which is the sperm and the egg. So again, we are coming back to the germinal seed of creation and of all life. Cancer also represents the past. And I'm not talking about the past like childhood, although it very well means that as well. But here in this instance, Cancer represents memory. And memory, we know, is long lasting and lives forever. An emotional experience will never be forgotten. there will be an imprint of that emotion and what it has caused throughout a lifetime. Because Cancer rules memory, it also rules memories of past lives. So Cancer represents your immediate past life connected to the fourth house, which is the house of foundation, the number 4. Here we can, with sufficient training, access the Akashic records, access past lives, not just of each individual person or family or tribe, but of an entire planet and all species within it. Cancer is the bedrock of that which psychologically explains the happenings. That's the best way to put it. The happenings of emotions, the impact of emotions, and how that impact can affect the person psychologically, not just throughout his whole life or her life, but successive future lives to come. It also gives history of that soul's emotional history and its evolution or degeneration. Cancer rules the mother. She is the lower vibration of Gaia, giving birth to everything in life, including viruses, insects, bacteria. All of it comes from a womb. So Cancer is very, very important, talking esoterically. Mundanely, however, Cancer takes on a different definition. Cancer represents the ups and downs of daily life. We know this because Cancer is ruled by the moon. And the moon has 4 major phases, and it has 7 subphases. And broken down further, it has 28 tinctures, all of them related to the astrological signs of the zodiac, the houses, and the planets. It is where we find the astrological birth chart, the blueprint of that life that's incarnating, not just the current life, but also the next life and the past life. It is a true homogeneity of the totality of life for each individual. The moon, however, is very unstable. The phases that it goes through represents those unstable phases. And it's quite neutral. There's no good or bad, for the moon doesn't give its own light. It bounces the light from the sun. So its impact on a person's chart is impartial, objective. Actually, not objective, but quite subjective. It's subject to the interpretation of the person going through an emotional experience. Hold on. That may not agree with other people's interpretation of those experiences. Cancer rules the self-preservation principle. It is very clannish energy. People say, oh, Cancer is moody. What makes Cancer moody is the different temperaments are expressed by the phases of the moon. Cancer, both men and women, possess multiple needs. Some of these, of course, the needs are emotional, no doubt, but the needs are complex. It's molded into existence. It's not something that you are born with. It's something that you accumulate over lifetime after lifetime. Think of a sponge. You buy a sponge and you throw it in water. It soaks up that whole water. But the sponge cannot discriminate whether that water is dirty, salty, sugary, or bland. And that becomes the emotional imprint of that sponge. Cancer rules psychometry. There are people who are very adept at touching people, other people, touching objects, and feeling the emotional vibration that it emits. Cancer is heavy. It's also quite beautiful, but highly volatile. It can be very, very good, or it can be very, very bad. Saturn rules karma, karmic retribution, discipline, restriction, limitations. To have it in Cancer, which is already difficult energy to begin with, compounds this principle. And that's why Saturn in Cancer is considered detriment. Detriment meaning that it does not function with the flow or positivity that it does in the other signs. Here, talking mundanely now, Cancer can be very insecure. It can have hang-ups, especially psychological ones, which has to be transcended in the current life. That is the karmic lesson of Saturn in Cancer. Issues of self-esteem, self-worth, confidence in oneself is also tested in its most severity in Cancer. The Cancer person, to reach a certain level of happiness and fulfillment, which is reflected by the Ten of Cups, might take a lifetime. Cancer can be quite moody, quite unreasonable, and it can create powerful judgments of any minuscule slight that it goes through. It doesn't let go of past hurts or emotions, and if over time they get to harness that energy, they can use it to accomplish much good. But unfortunately, like Saturn in its fall in Aries, this can take a lifetime to master. We have also the career aspect of Cancer. Cancer is a fantastic money-making sign. Fantastic moneymaker. The moon, which rules Cancer, is exalted in Taurus, the sign of money. Because Saturn is in Cancer, for many people who have Saturn in Cancer, it causes an opposition to the 10th house, which is the house of the career. But it's also the house of the parents. There might be psychological karma inherent in the parents that you may have carried with you in the current life. There might be also issues with the mother, where the relationship between the mother and daughter particularly can be quite complex, and there may be issues of control and competition. And this is subtle. It's not obvious to both the parent all the person with this placement in their chart. There's a certain level of shyness and insecurity with those born with Saturn in Cancer. They may not open up to people easily, rather like to stay in their shell. You have some that this becomes a way of life, while you have others that strive to transcend that deficiency, where now the person can relate to others. But if there is a trauma here related to one of the parents, this also might take time to heal through professional therapy or through much introspection, which is why Cancer loves to be alone, especially with the Saturn here, to allow introspection to occur. The career is ambitious. Saturn opposing Cancer from the 10th house, which is its natural position as opposing Capricorn, the sign that it rules. It creates an atmosphere, especially in the workplace, where there is stiff competition. This position of Saturn in Cancer can also be quite cunning, quite manipulative, conniving, deceitful. But it's all done under the name of self-preservation. Self-preservation is the name of the game when you are dealing with Saturn in Cancer. Saturn here represents past mistakes, past judgments that may not have been ethical or moral, that require correction in the current life. When it comes to personal joy, this can be quite difficult for Cancer, especially the women. There has to be a level of comfortability for her or him to feel like they can move forward unencumbered by any insecurities or setbacks that stem from their childhood or a trauma scar from one of the parents. This is important to understand because when you have someone with Saturn in Cancer that enters into an interpersonal relationship with another human being, these factions might creep up and cause difficulty in harmonizing relationships. This is something that the person born with Saturn in Cancer has to stay very, very vigilant. Very vigilant. They have to work on any shortcomings that they may possess, and they cannot suppress it. I mean, many do, but it's only a matter of time before either explodes or implodes. Saturn in Cancer teaches us a great lesson there. It does. Here, more than in any other sign, Cancer has to exercise self-love. Self-love and consummate trust. Cancer has to trust her instincts, never abandon them, because they will eventually allow her or him to bring themselves to balance and wholeness. But it does mean confronting your past and certain complexity that are only inherent in Saturn in Cancer. Guys, please donate, please give Fernando CashApp, FERNANDO and Leo. And now I will go with Saturn in Leo.